Picture yourself inside an optician's shop. The lighting is warm and flattering, the way it always is in these places. Glass shelves line the walls, sunglasses arranged like jewelry. You pick up a pair of Ray-Ban Wayfarers, turn them over, feel the solid arms, look at the clean, dark lenses, and the tag says $249. You wince a little, then think, well, they're Ray-Bans. That's just what good sunglasses cost. You've believed that your whole life. So has everyone you know. Your parents probably believed it too, and maybe their parents before them. You're wrong. Those sunglasses cost somewhere between $5 and $8 to actually make. The lenses, the frame, the hinges, even the little logo on the side, roughly the price of a sandwich. And the reason you're paying $249 for an $8 product has nothing to do with quality, materials, design, or research. It's because a single company controls almost every piece of the global eyewear industry. It makes the glasses, it owns the stores that sell them, it runs the insurance plan that pays for them, it even owns the brands you assume are competing with each other, and it's been running this way for more than 60 years. In plain sight, while 4.4 billion people on Earth who need corrective lenses just keep paying whatever price gets put in front of them, that company is EssilorLuxottica. The man who built it started life as an orphan in Milan, and the city in China quietly pulling the whole thing apart has fewer than 1 million people and a name most of the world has. Never heard. The story of how one company took control of your eyesight starts somewhere you wouldn't expect, an orphanage in post-war Milan. Leonardo Del Vecchio was born there in 1935. His father died before he was born, and his mother, unable to support all her children, placed him in an orphanage. He grew up there, never adopted, with no money, connections, or privilege. At 14, he was apprenticed to a tool and die maker, a small workshop cutting and shaping metal parts. He learned precision, how to shape tiny components by hand, how to build molds exact enough to churn out identical pieces. Unglamorous work, but it handed him a skill most people never picked up. In 1961, at 26, Del Vecchio opened a small workshop in Agordo, a town in the Italian Dolomites surrounded by mountains and not much else. He wasn't making complete glasses yet, just parts, hinges, temples, nose pads, sold to other eyewear companies. A handful of employees unknown outside the immediate area. He worked with his own hands, knew every mold and press in the shop, and understood something most people wouldn't have. Notice the margins on eyewear components were extraordinary. Over the following decade, he climbed steadily from parts to full frames, from making frames for others, to selling frames under his own name, and eventually to buying up other people's brands outright. Each step was deliberate, each acquisition calculated. He named the company Luxottica and ran it with the quiet intensity of a man who'd grown up with nothing and knew exactly what it felt like to have no control over his own life. He was building a machine that would eventually give him control over an entire industry, and he never stopped building it until the day he died. What came next is one of the most methodical corporate takeovers in the history of any industry, unfolding so slowly and quietly that most consumers never noticed. By the time anyone paid attention, it was already finished. In 1990, Del Vecchio listed Luxottica on the New York Stock Exchange, not Milan, not Rome, New York, because that's where the money was, and America was the world's biggest eyewear market. He reportedly told an interviewer that if you have to sail, better to pick the big C. He used that capital to start buying Vogue eyewear, came in 1990. LensCrafters came in 1995 through a hostile takeover of U.S. Shoe Corporation, a company 5 times Luxottica's size, a small Italian eyewear maker swallowing an American corporation 5 times its own. Scale, purely to get its optical retail chain, he bought Sunglass Hut in 2001, adding over 3,000 retail locations worldwide, and he bought Ray-Ban in 1999 for $640 million. Analysts said he'd overpaid. He didn't care. He already knew what he was going to do with it. When Del Vecchio bought Ray-Ban, a pair of Wayfarers cost about $30, and you could pick them up at a gas station, popular but not luxury. He repositioned the brand immediately, pulling wayfarers out of gas stations and drugstores, raising the price, placing them in Sunglass Hut and Lens Crafters, both of which he owned, and marketing them as premium. Within a few years, the same $30 Wayfarers were selling for over $150. Today, they run over $200. The product itself never changed. Same lens, same frame, same hinge, only the owner changed and what they decided to charge. But the acquisition that really revealed how the machine worked was Oakley. And the part people remember once they hear it because it plays out like something from a mob movie. In the early 2000s, Oakley was one of the biggest eyewear brands on earth, beloved by athletes, known for innovation and durability. It was independent, not part of Luxottica, and it sold extremely well inside Sunglass Hut, which Luxottica owned. Then the two got into a pricing dispute. The details are murky, but the outcome wasn't. Luxottica pulled Oakley products from Sunglass Hut entirely. Overnight, Oakley lost access to the largest specialty sunglasses retailer in the world, and its stock collapsed by roughly half. And a thriving company suddenly looked like it was in trouble, not because its products got worse, but because one company controlled the shelf space and chose to clear it. Then Luxottica bought Oakley. In 2007, with the stock still depressed, Luxottica acquired it for $2.1 billion. The company that controlled the store had starved the brand, crashed its stock, then bought it at a discount. Jim Jannard, who'd built Oakley from a garage in 1975 selling motorcycle grips, watched his life's work absorbed into the very machine he'd been fighting. Once inside Luxottica, Oakley's products went right back onto Sunglass Hut shelves, prices climbed, and business resumed. Except now, Luxottica owned both sides of every transaction. The message was clear to every other eyewear brand: compete with us on price and we'll pull your product. Watch your stock collapse and buy you for less than you're worth. Nobody challenged Luxottica on pricing again. And Luxottica kept building. It signed licensing deals with nearly every major fashion house that wanted its name on eyewear without doing the design or manufacturing itself. Prada, Chanel, Versace, Armani, Burberry, Dolce & Gabbana, Ralph Lauren, Tiffany, Michael Kors, Coach, Valentino, Tory Burch, the list growing every year. Each deal worked the same way. The fashion house lent its name. Luxottica designed the frames, manufactured them, distributed them, and sold them in its own stores, and the fashion house collected a royalty check. The customer paid $350 for a frame that came off the same production line as an $80 pair to two shelves below it. The only real difference was the logo stamped on the temple arm. In 2018, Luxottica merged with Essilor, the world's largest lens manufacturer. The combined company, Essilor-Luxottica, now controlled both frames and lenses. The brands, the manufacturing, the retail stores, the lens technology, and it owned one more thing most people don't realize: the part that turns the whole system from an aggressive business into something closer to a trap: EyeMed Vision Care. The second largest vision insurance company in the U.S. with 43 million members. When your eye doctor tells you insurance covers frames up to $150 at participating retailers, the insurer paying for those frames, the retailer selling them, and the company that manufactured them can all be the exact same entity. Essilor-Luxottica writes, the benefit that steers you toward the store it owns to buy the product it made at the price it set. At no point in that process are you actually standing in a competitive market. Every step was designed by the same company. Try picturing this in any other industry. If Ford owned every dealership in America, built every car on the road, ran the second largest auto insurer, and set prices with no competing manufacturer anywhere on the lot, people would call it a scandal. In eyewear, most people don't even know it's happening. And by the time Leonardo Del Vecchio died of pneumonia in June 2022 at 87, the orphan from Milan had become the second richest person in Italy. The machine he built kept running without him. Here's where the story turns. because everything just described would remain permanent and untouchable if not for a city in eastern China most people have never heard of. Danyang sits in Jiangsu province, about 2 hours west of Shanghai by high-speed rail, population under 1 million. Show it to someone on a map and they'd have no reason to look twice. The kind of place guidebooks skip and business travelers never visit, tucked into the Yangtze River Delta among farmland and light industry, but Danyang carries a nickname, the Glasses, capital of the world. Once you hear the numbers, it stops sounding like a boast and starts sounding like an understatement. The city produces over 400 million spectacle lenses every single year, 50% of every lens made on the planet, and half of the world's corrective lenses for every brand in every country come from this one city of under 1 million people. Danyang also produces over 100 million pairs of frames a year, about a third of China's total frame output, with more than 1,600 eyewear companies employing over 50,000 people and generating roughly $2.8 billion in annual revenue. Exports alone topped $660 million in 2022, growing nearly 19% year-on-year, even through COVID. And the industry got started almost by accident. In the 1960s, educated young people who'd worked in lens factories in Shanghai and Suzhou were relocated to the countryside during a period of political upheaval. They arrived in Danyang with nothing but the technical skills they'd picked up in the city. Small workshops appeared. People who knew how to grind glass taught their neighbors, who taught their families. By the 1980s, a full cottage industry had formed around lens production, small workshops, basic equipment, inconsistent quality, but volume kept growing at a fraction of what European or Japanese manufacturers charge. Through the 1990s and 2000s, Danyang transformed. Local government invested in industrial parks, brought in foreign technology and capital, and pushed manufacturers to raise their standards. Companies that had been making cheap lenses started investing in real R&D, partnering with universities in Shanghai and Nanjing, and buying coating and precision grinding equipment matching Germany and Japan. In 2014, a Danyang company called Dingxian Machinery developed China's first domestically built coating machine for spectacle lenses, breaking a foreign monopoly on the equipment that applies of the anti-reflective and scratch-resistant coatings modern lenses need. Today, Danyang doesn't just make cheap lenses. It makes lenses with the same multi-layer coatings, blue light filtering, UV protection, and precision grinding that expensive brands market as premium features. Independent testing has shown Danyang lenses meeting or beating the optical specs of brands costing 10 to 20 times more. The gap that once separated a Danyang lens from a German or Japanese one has narrowed to the point where most consumers and even many opticians can't tell the difference without checking the box. Some of the same factories producing lenses for domestic Chinese brands also produce lenses that end up inside frames carrying European and American brand names in Western optical chains. Different box, different logo, same lens. Zenni Optical understood this earlier than most. Founded in 2003 on a simple idea that cuts straight through 60 years of manufactured scarcity. Buy lenses and frames directly from Chinese manufacturers, put them on a website, and sell prescription glasses to American consumers at a fraction of what lens crafters or Pearl Vision would charge. No retail rent, no fashion house royalties, no Luxottica markup sitting between the factory and the customer. A pair of prescription glasses at Zenni starts at $6.95, full prescription lenses, anti-reflective coating, frame included, with the priciest frames on the site and rarely topping $50. Zenni has sold over 50 million pairs. That's not a niche site living on the margins. That's a genuine mass-market competitor that exists because Chinese factories can produce the same product for a fraction of the cost and ship it directly to the person wearing it. Warby Parker approached it from the American side. One co-founder has told the story publicly enough that it's become something of a startup legend. He forgot his glasses on a trip, went to replace them, and the optician quoted him $700. Staring at that number, he thought about the smartphone in his pocket, a processor, a camera, GPS, a touchscreen, a cellular radio that had cost him less than the two bent pieces of plastic and glass he was being asked to buy. He launched Warby Parker in 2010, selling stylish prescription glasses online for $95. The company grew past 200 retail locations and went public in 2021 at a valuation over $6 billion. Warby Parker didn't end Luxottica's dominance, but it proved something important. People would switch the moment somebody handed them a credible alternative at a price that didn't feel like a robbery. Here's the detail that ties this whole story together and the one people find hardest to accept. Walk into a sunglass hut and pick up a pair of Ray-Ban Wayfarers for $249. Then go home and order a pair from Zenni for $22. Well, there's a real chance the lenses in both came out of the same city, maybe the same industrial park, maybe production lines run by the same workers using the same equipment and raw materials. The Danyang factory doesn't care whose logo goes on the temple. It sells lenses, millions of them, to whoever places the order, and its margin barely shifts whether a lens ends up in a $300 frame or a $15 one. The only thing that changes is what the customer pays at the other end. You're not paying $227 for a better lens. You're paying it for a logo, a store with flattering lighting, and a monopoly that it's been raising prices for 60 years because nobody made it stop. And the numbers on the consumer side are starting to shift. Online eyewear sales have grown at double-digit rates worldwide for 5 straight years. In the U.S., the share of prescription glasses bought online climbed from under 3% in 2015 to over 15% in 2025, higher still among younger buyers who are comfortable ordering online and never absorbed the idea that glasses have to be expensive. Every percentage point that moves online bypasses Luxottica's retail network. And every pair sold at $20 instead of $250 is another crack in a wall that stood for 60 years. EssilorLuxottica isn't going bankrupt tomorrow. It reported revenue over 28 billion euros in 2024 and remains the dominant force in eyewear by a staggering margin. But this is the same pattern that plays out whenever a monopoly runs into the internet and Chinese manufacturing at the same time. The music industry thought piracy was a phase. Taxi companies thought Uber was a gimmick. Bookstores thought Amazon was a novelty. The incumbent always assumes disruption stays at the margins. It never does. 4.5 billion people on this planet need corrective lenses, more than half the human population. For decades, a huge share of them paid prices set by a single company that manufactures, distributes, retails, and ensures the product from end to end. The orphan from Milan built a machine so complete that most consumers never realized they were living inside it. And now a city of under 1 million people in eastern China is producing the same product at the same quality for a fraction of the price, shipping it directly to consumers who are increasingly asking the question Luxottica never wanted anyone to ask, why does this cost so much? Once you hear the answer, it's impossible to unhear it costs that much because one company decided it should and nothing stopped them until now. So go back to where we started. You're standing in that optician, the warm lighting, the glass shelves, those Ray-Ban Wayfarers in front of you. $249. The person behind the counter smiles and calls them a classic, timeless, worth the investment. But now you know the frame cost about $5 to make. You know, the same company owns the brand, the store, the lens, and maybe your insurance plan. You know, an orphan from Milan built the most complete monopoly in consumer goods, and most people never knew it existed. And, you know, a city in China you'd never heard of 10 minutes ago makes half the lenses on the planet and will sell you a pair for the price of a coffee. You can put the Ray-Bans back on the shelf or buy them anyway because they look good and you can afford it. Either way, you're no longer making that call in the dark.